So I'm going to present you a little bit of the work I did during my PhD, and it is still some are still in analysis. So I'm going to talk about the biology of nests and the different experiments that we did around that, and some leads of biocontrol that we did on Vespa velutina. So first, I'm going to present you a little bit more about nests biology, the development cycle, and we are going to talk about the food distribution inside hornet colonies. Then we will focus on the study of home range and activity in hornets using RFID tags. And then I will lead to biocontrol in Asian hornet, and I will talk about the state of the art in this species, and talk to you about the experiment we did around screening of different entomopathogenic fungi and the way that you apply it on the Asian hornet and the impact it will have on their survival. So on the left, you see this graph about the development cycle of the Asian hornet. You already saw this several times today, so I guess everyone knows it now. But you can see that you have several growth phases in the evolution of the nest building. So at first, you will have what is called the initiation phase, in which you will have the primary nest built by only the queen, and you will have only the queen that is feeding the larvae and creating the colony. Then you will have a growth phase, and this is the one that you will have in summer, in which you will have the first cohorts of different workers cohorts that will build the nest more and more and make it have an exponential growth. And then you will have the latest phase, which is the reproductive phase, in which you will have all the new genes and males that will be produced, and that will lead to the death of the colony. And so at the right of the screen, you can see a little drawing about the different stages of development that you will find inside the hornet nest. So you will have eggs that will be laid by the queen, that will hatch to be a little larvae that will grow. And when the larvae are big enough, they will just stop to eat and start to be a little silk cocoon on top of their head, and they will pupate to be nymphs before emerging in adults. So in the pupation stages, because of this silk top, you will not have any exchanges between the insect and the workers of the colony. So the first experiment I wanted to present you was the one in which we focused on the distribution of food inside the hornet nests using heavy metal labeling. So the objective was to see whether we would observe different pattern of distribution of those foods in regards of the different development stages that will be present in the nests in the different period of the year. And so to do so, we maintained in laboratory 7 different wild hornet colonies that we captured along the year during 2 years. And we labeled a different type of food, being carbohydrates and proteins, with 2 different heavy metals, being respectively cesium and rubidium. This way, we could really follow how the food would be distributed by workers inside the colony. So the principle of the experiment is quite simple. In each colony, you will take 4 different individuals. 2 of them, you will, so A and B in the top, you will put them in the cages and let them to starve for 4 hours, and 2 of them in another cages for 4 hours too. Then you will present to them a little bit of solution that will be labeled with the different markers. So, for example, the sugar solution was labeled with cesium, and the proteic solution was labeled with rubidium. So you let the workers feed on those 2 foods for 2 hours, and then you freeze one of the 2 of each cage's workers for analysis, and you let the two others distribute their food inside the nests for 24 hours. Then you just freeze everything, and you run ECPS MS analysis to know exactly the dry weight of each individual and the quantity of heavy metal present in each individual. So we took all the larvae, all the eggs, all the adults that were present in each colony. We didn't analyze the pupes because the nymph, because they were not able to receive any food during the 24 hours of the experiment. So this is an example of a map that you could obtain by doing this kind of food distribution analysis. So in orange here, you have the individuals that received proteins, and you will know that by the quantity of rubidium that you will find in the individuals. And in blue, you will have the individuals that have been labeled with the cesium, so they received the carbohydrates from the control workers that received it in the first place. So for example, here you can see that you have different larvae present all around this brood comb, and you have only some of those larvae that received sugar, and you have here in orange different larvae who received proteins. Here, this is just some of the different workers that received both in blue carbohydrates, so cesium, and in orange proteins. So the control you can see here, those are the two controls that were the distributors of proteins, and the two controls that were the distributors of carbohydrates. And here in this stage, in this case, you can see that this individual, he requested sugar from the control that distributed carbohydrates. And here we had 43 different workers in the colony, and we had 4 of them who received proteins and 1 who received sugar, for example. And the queen, in this case, didn't receive anything. So it allowed us to see how the different elements were distributed amongst the different individuals. So in this graph, you can see it's a little bit complicated, I know. I will just roughly explain to you what it means. So in fact, you have the different nests with their codes that are the number that are below here. You have the different phases of development of the colony. So here the initiation, here the growth, and here the reproduction period. In fact, all the nests are sorted by the date of collection. So you can see that the composition of the nests in terms of quantity of workers, larvae, presence of males or eggs, and the presence of genes too. This is the hard gray here. I don't know why it's not, but yeah. So you have different composition around that, and you can see here the code for all this number here. You have the total number of the different categories of insects, and you will have the number of labeled with rubidium, so that received protein, the number labeled with cesium, so received sugar, and the ones who received both. So for example, here you had 4 different control, and you had 2 of them who received proteins labeled with rubidium. This is logic. And no control who only received cesium, because the 2 of them were begging for the proteins, so they received both proteins and sugar that were labeled by the control. Okay, so thanks to that, we ran a few analyses to find if there were some correlation between the type of some characteristics of the larvae or the workers, given the quantity of the labeling element that they will receive. So, for example, for the larvae, you can see here that there was no link between, no correlation between the larvae weight and the quantity of sugar that they would receive, but there was a correlation between their weight and the quantity of protein that they will receive. So the lighter larvae received more protein than the heavier larvae. And for the workers, it was exactly the same, considering the sugar. And for the workers, it was the opposite, considering the protein. So in fact, for the protein, you would have the quantity of received protein would be higher if you were a bigger worker. So it means that in our case, so here the lighter workers received more sugar. And the heavier received more proteins, and the heavier larvae received more proteins too. The second experiment I was willing to present to you was the one we did around the study of the home range and the activity of the Vespa velutina using RFID tags. So to do so, we took nests that we put in a box with the access of the exterior. So as you can see over here, you have a tunnel that connects the nest over there with a portal over there that will allow us to see the activity, the entrance of different hornets. So we tagged 163 different individuals in this colony, and we looked at their in and out activity, but also we ran a homing range experiment. So here we put 318 different individuals that we released in different locations. So we put them in 4 different locations in 6 different distances from the nests, and we released them, and we looked at the time they would need to come back to the nest and the probability that they would come back safely to the nest. So the distance went from 500 meters to 5 kilometers from the nests. So what we observed was that we had a very strong effect of the releasing distance on the probability and the speed of coming back. So at 5 kilometers, only 5% were able to coming back. And when you released them at 2 kilometers, 62% of them were able to coming back. And when you release them at 500 meters, then you had more than 90% that were able to come back. So we concluded from this that the probable home range for that were under 2 kilometers. And in fact, this is a result that we were able to really confirm by the observations that we did with the telemetric work that we did later on. But I'm sure that Peter will explain this later on with his presentation. But most of the time, we found nests in this range. And considering the activity of the Asian hornets workers, we showed that most 98% of the trips occurred between 7 and 8 p.m. and that they were in average 15 minutes long, and that these parameters were not influenced by the hornet size. And the last part of the presentation I was willing to show you was how we tried to develop biocontrol tools using entomopathogenic fungi. So this is really exploratory research. So first of all, a little state of the art of the Asian hornets biocontrol situation. So in Europe, we don't have a lot of animals or of beings that have been or potential biocontrol agents. So first, the only predator that was described was the honey buzzard, which is a predator of a lot of different species of vespids and hymenopterans in general. There was also the description of a parasitic fly, but it was not really specific. This is also a big parasitic agent for bumblebees, so not really suitable for the control of Vespa mellutina. And it was also showed that some nematodes were able to parasite the queens of Vespa mellutina, but again, not really specific. And with a very, very difficult development cycle, so not really suitable for biological control implantation. Some attractants were also are starting to be developed in China, so using male pheromones and alarm pheromones. But yeah, we need to improve those techniques to have better results, because now the efficiency of those tools is still to be demonstrated at the large scale. And so the parts that I was willing to talk to you about is about some studying that we did about the entomopathogenic fungal agents that we described in the invasive area in France against Vespa mellutina. So what we did is to sample different soil sample in the area in which we had our lab, so in Bordeaux, and using the insect bait methods. It means that you have some larvae of, here we use Lobesia bruna, so this is a moth, and you will let them walk in the surface of the ground for a certain amount of time, so they can really go in contact with the spores of the fungi that is in the ground, and then you can look at the different caterpillars and screen. When you can see a fungus attack, you can screen those fungus that you will take from it to see whether it can attack hymenopterans. Then we use what we call multi-passaging cleaning. It means that you will really extract the different type, the different fungus that you will find, and you will clean it for at least 5 passages. So you will take spores and use spores each time to be sure that you will really have the fungus that you are looking at. In parallel of that, we found a queen of Asian hornet that was directly infected by Beauveria bassiana during the trapping that we were doing in Besides. So it allowed us also, thanks to multi-passaging cleaning, to isolate a strain of Beauveria bassiana. So after this process, we were able to select 4 different strains of Metarhizium robertii and 1 of Beauveria bassiana. For those last one, since it was found already in the Asian hornets, we were willing to go further in the analysis of this particular specimen. So we did some genetic identification, and we looked a little bit further at his growth capacity given the temperature and the condition. So this is one of the paper that we published in 2019. But I want to go further in the other one. So it was, the aim was to test whether you can have a better efficiency in the impact of those different strains of entomopathogenic fungi, given in regards with the methods of application. So the first one was the most classic one. It was direct inoculation. It means that you will spray the different spores on the Asian hornets and then look at their evolution and the expression of this infection or not. The second one was to see if you put some spores in the grounds in the paper that is the support of the Petri dishes box, the big Petri dishes box that we used for the experiment, will the hornet, by walking on these grounds, infect themselves with the spores. And this one was if you put it in the food contamination. So here we tested with proteic food. And the last case was if you had one individual directly infected with the pathogen, will it spread to the other individuals? We made sure to have always individuals from colonies, from one colony, so they can get together and not kill themselves inside the pots, of course. So what we observed was that there were not really significant differences between the different strains, either on the LT50, meaning the time they would need to kill 50% of the individuals, and neither on the mortality, the quantity of hornets that would die, between the different strains. But there were huge differences between the application methods. So we observed that the direct application method was much more efficient than the food application method. There were not significant differences between the direct contact one, the direct one and the contact one, and either between the contact one and the transferred one, but the direct one was better than the transferred one. So yes, it was quick. I'm sorry, I didn't have a lot of time. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any question, I will be glad to answer them. And sorry if I rushed a lot, but I'm sorry I don't have a lot of time left. Thanks.